Let's talk about movies. Justice League needs no introduction. Generations of DC fans have waited a long time, some even waited for decades, to see a silver screen adaptation of their favorite or second favorite superhero team-up. After the death of Superman, the world faces an imminent invasion from the threatening CGI stain known as Steppenwolf, so Batman and Wonder Woman go around recruiting other exceptional individuals, known as metahumans, in a desperate attempt to save the planet. Steppenwolf is looking for 3 mother boxes, which are essentially the Ark of the Covenant for this session. He needs them to reconfigure our world, destroy it in order to adapt the environment to his own needs. The movie was directed by, let's say, Zack Snyder. It was primarily written by Chris Terrio, who previously collaborated with David S. Goyer on Batman v Superman. Somewhere along the way, Zack Snyder had to leave the project due to family tragedy. So Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon to sort out the mess that was left behind, and so he did some rewrites and reshoots.
Mustache!
The film is rated PG-13. It's around 1 hour and 50 minutes long. Sans credits, and with credits it clocks in around 2 hours, which is surprising when you take Zack Snyder's previous superhero films into consideration, more specifically Watchmen and Batman v Superman, which are both in their shortest version around 2.5 hours long. Rumor has it that there is a ton of material that was left on the cutting room floor, and a shorter cut was demanded from the studio so they could have more time slots in the cinema, which means more money. Superhero roster and the accompanying acting talent is very potent. We have Ben Affleck as Batman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Ezra Miller as The Flash, Ray Fisher as the Cyborg, and Jason Momoa as Aquaman. Individual actors are fine, but the chemistry between them is a little bit shaky. In this regard, they are a far cry from, Kevin Feige's harmonious toy set. Gal Gadot is once again really good as Wonder Woman. She is not a particularly good actress, but there is a charisma there. She made the role her own. She is the cinematic version of Diana Prince. In that regard, she's somewhat like a female version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not a good actor, but there is enough charisma there to make the role, her own. When she is on screen, you feel as if you are in safe hands. For me, Gal Gadot was the best surprise in Batman v Superman, and even though the atrocious final third of Wonder Woman left me wanting for more, I enjoyed the wide-eyed wonder and a fish-out-of-water shtick of the first 2/3 enough to be excited about her contribution to Justice League. The Cyborg is probably the second most interesting character in the film, and when it began, I really thought I will end up loving the Flash more than any other character. Ezra Miller is a fantastic actor, and he plays Barry Allen as this vibrant and quirky character for the first 20 minutes. Then he just turns into this tasteless caricature. His every sentence is a joke, which makes him come off as pathologically self-absorbed. He practically loses his humanity. The Aquaman is completely insignificant. I love Jason Momoa. I think he has tons of charisma too, but this character just did not land that well. Though at least he reacts to what goes on around him, he doesn't appear to be out of place. Batman is a completely different character this time around. My impression is that they aimed at some sort of character development over the two films, a story arc that is actually not very dissimilar from the story arc of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, from a jaded, nihilistic individual to a hopeful, affirming person. It sort of works if you squint a few times, and to accept what they've done with his character requires a lot of goodwill from you as you enter the cinema, though honestly, it has been a long time since I've seen a film that in its entirety hinges on the goodwill of the audience. When it comes to movie itself, one word kept looping through my mind as I was watching it, and that word was functional. Everything about it is functional. It is by no means a bad film. It is not an atrocity. Even though it is edited to the inch of its life, it is not as incoherent as some people claim. It has a rhythm of a music video. Now, considering the production problems of Justice League were well publicized, this sort of criticism of the editing is a low-hanging fruit. Because when you look at Zack Snyder's back catalog, all his movies, with the exception of his big screen debut Dawn of the Dead, have this feel of a hyper-stylized music video or a commercial. This is something that is a significant part of his filmmaking. He actually began as the director and cinematographer of car commercials, and he also worked for brands like Nike and Gatorade, so it seems that this style just stuck with him. This look is consistent throughout the entire film. Hats off to Joss Whedon for making sure that this film looks like a visually coherent product. I likened the film to a product. That's a review in and of itself. As most reviewers have already pointed out, the film is filled with witticisms that are typical for Whedon. The quips like when Batman says men tend to act like the doomsday clock has a snooze button truly ring like a line that came out of Whedon's pen. It might have been written by Chris Terrio, though I might be mistaken. Chris Terrio is by no means a below-average writer. It just seems as if the pressure of the production behind superhero films is not an environment in which he can thrive. Batman v Superman's plot reflects this perfectly, as it was, all over the place. So the plot of Justice League is a direct response to that. It is extremely easy to follow and simple. Though, this was probably due to Joss Whedon's rewrites. The story moves from point A to point B in a straight line. Mother boxes are a blatant MacGuffin. The writers tried to give them an interesting angle by having Steppenwolf converse with them, as if they had this insidious sentience, but it's actually nothing more than window dressing. The film was brisk and colorful, and the visual craft was mostly on point. The last third had a noticeable dip in the quality of CGI. There is a moment near the end of the film when Steppenwolf jumps in front of the camera, and I swear he looked like a PS2 era 3D model. Also, it's really nice to hear Danny Elfman's old Batman tune during the final battle. There is also an ominous variation of Superman's old melody sprinkled here and there. There is also absolutely no sense of danger or high stakes in the last third. Every film saga or TV show that begins resurrecting characters ends up nullifying any sense of danger or progression. Parallels between a messianic figure and Kal-El aside, I wish filmmakers stopped doing this, because such casual resurrection, notice the word casual resurrection, is an entropy of storytelling. So, to make up for a lack of stakes and tension in the final battle, Whedon, or production, opted to turn it into a light-hearted slapstick romp. It kinda took me by surprise that I found this refreshing. Although, in spite of this, action scenes were weirdly sluggish. Heroes and villains moved in a very deliberate way that reminded me of comic book panels, which in itself is kind of an interesting choice, but I was not particularly excited by the action, and Batman saving Martha Kent's scene from Batman vs. Superman, that fight scene is a tough act to follow, and this film has nothing that can even slightly compare to that. To be honest, almost an entire film was a bit of a numb experience. As far as feelings go, I can count 2 times I have actually felt something. The only time I felt even a tinge of tension was during a Bruce and Diana confrontation around the 1 hour mark of the film, when they discussed a radical idea that might give them edge against Steppenwolf. For the first time since The Man of Steel, I felt as if the cause and consequence of all the events actually had friction with the characters and mattered to them. If only the rest of the movie was filled with such scenes of drama and friction, it would have been a much more interesting experience. The only time I felt even a tinge of emotion was a very specific scene with Martha Kent, somewhere around an hour and 25-minute mark. It was a very short scene and we did not linger on her face all that long, but it just reminded me how good an actress Diane Lane is. These veterans like Jeremy Irons, J.K. Simmons, Diane Lane, they really could have been used more. Or maybe they just ended up on the cutting room floor. Also Billy Crudup. Billy Crudup, who previously played Dr. Manhattan in Zack Snyder's adaptation of Watchmen, has an extremely brief, it's a brief performance as Barry Allen's dad. He is one of those actors I always loved and wished to see more in big budget flicks. When it comes to rating, I'd give this film 2.5 stars out of 5, 3 stars tops. Overall, it has a nice photography by Fabian Wagner, who is mostly known for his work on Game of Thrones. It has sleek production values, but it is also a hollow experience that cannot be saved by its talented cast. Hey humans and those who feel otherwise, we are a whole new channel with a lot of passion and a whole lot of things to improve. If you see the potential in our little rants, please consider liking and subscribing. It would mean a world to us. Have a nice day and I'll see you in the next one.